the price action has not been good for crypto. It has not been as we would like it to be. But in these moments is the time to actually come back to basics and ask ourselves, why did we invest into crypto in the first place? Why did we stay here for the entire bull run? And I think it's not just because the price goes up. If you're investing in cryptocurrency, if you're here for the long run, you probably are aware that crypto is a use case that is extremely necessary for the world. It is likely that it will be adopted due to its usefulness. But right now in this video, what we want to do is to actually test that hypothesis, to see the arguments in favor of crypto and the ones against, and to hopefully help you reinforce your belief in cryptocurrency even when the price is down, because you're part of a movement that is just more about short-term price. It's about long-term change. Yeah, I know you're probably hurting. The cryptocurrency price has not been the best, not been what we would like to. But in these moments is the times where we have to stop ourselves, to stop looking at the price, touch grass maybe even, and come back to the basics, come back to asking ourselves, what is the bigger picture? Why do we believe so much in cryptocurrencies and in their future? And what are the fundamentals, I would say, for this asset class? And to understand that case, to understand the real potential of cryptocurrency, I think context is super important. We need to take a look at the world, what is happening in our world, to understand what is the need for crypto and what problems it really solves. And more specifically, I think we need to focus on our current monetary system. You know, if you look here at these graphs and these informations, you can see that global national debt across the world is now at $97 trillion. So just for context, that's a crazy number. It will take you more than 31,000 years to count to 1 trillion, let alone 97 of them. So it's crazy. We don't have a notion of how much money and how much debt we have and how it is actually impossible to pay it. But yeah, no matter where you look in the world, whatever country you look for or you look at, you see that this is a problem that every country is facing. Everyone has huge debts compared to what they produce every year. And more importantly, no country in the world has a sound monetary systems. All countries have their own fiat currencies. They have their own central banks, which have the power to print the money, the fiat currency, just from nothing, really, from that, from your belief that your government will be able to pay this debt. However, what that does is that it comes at a high cost, the cost of inflation. And inflation is contributing to many of the world's social problems. You know, it is increasing the wealth inequality. It is transferring the wealth of the many to the top 10% of people at the expense mostly of the middle class. I would say it's not the poor hurt a lot, but it's not especially the poor, it's the middle class that become poor as well and start hurting as well. And this is because mostly, you know, wages are sticky. They don't keep up with inflation as fast as assets do. And the ones that are holding assets are, of course, seeing their purchasing power actually increasing or, you know, getting better. But the ones who are not, the ones who are relying on wages, are basically seeing their purchasing power decreasing due to that reason, because the price of assets is following up this inflation, but the wages are not following up this quick inflation. And this is naturally a very unsustainable situation. You know, it's a situation that is generating a lot of unfairness, a lot of anger of the population of people like you and me, and that will eventually lead to some kind of crisis, to some kind of monetary reset, I would say. And in fact, that actually aligns with what the history shows us, because over the years, we have had different countries with different currencies. And countries change currency not because it's fun. They change it because eventually the maintenance of the current currency they have is unsustainable. Their monetary systems become unsustainable. They start having too much debt, too much debasing of the currency. The system goes down, and there needs to have a new system. There needs to come a new solution for people to be able to trade and to participate in the economy. But when currencies are debased, people are suffering. And when people are suffering, they take it, and up until to a point, they realize how big the mess is and how big the problem is, and there are revolutions and there are changes. And the same happens to every currency. Even if you have the dominant currency that right now is the US and the dollar, the truth is, if you look at the graph of dominance currencies, they start losing dominance over time due to the debasement of these currencies by the governments. And considering the level of debt of countries, considering the huge inflation problems we are having in different nations, which of course are leading to social unrest, a lot of insatisfaction, I think it's only a matter of time until people realize what is going on, because inflation won't stop. The governments need to keep inflating to pay away their debt, to make their debt worth less, because they are not able to pay. And when that happens, as soon as we keep having inflation to try to solve this huge mess we created, I think people will understand what has been done to our money and what has been done to our purchasing power, and how our future is basically at risk. And when we all realize, we all as a society, not just a few of us, the real worth of these sheets of papers that we call money, I think currency will collapse. The real culprits, the governments and the central banks that carried these irresponsible policies, monetary and fiscal policies, will be exposed. And then what? Then there's no more trust in these entities. The trust is already decreasing significantly, but it will go to zero or even negative. And the reality is that, unfortunately, the times won't be easy for all of us. Will be times with a lot of issues, a lot of uncertainty, and unfortunately, a lot of innocent people that have nothing to do with the policies and the decisions that were made by governments and central banks will be hurting at the expense of these decisions. Those will likely be tough times, tough times that I personally am not looking forward, and I don't think you are looking forward either. But humans are resourceful and life goes on. And that's the hope we need to hold on to. And that's the kind of positivity we need to have. And as long as we have resources, we can keep producing what we need to survive. However, the reality is, as humans, we have to trade. Trade is very important for us because it allows us to focus on certain activities, specialize, produce more, and generate more wealth for all of us. But of course, to trade, we need money, and we need something with the qualities and the properties of money, something that is a store of value for the extra value we are producing, and a store of value that we can use in the future to acquire other goods and needs we might have. And while we can go back to keeping tabs in a book or in a notebook with the producers, it's very likely that at some point we'll actually need to find a new currency to replace our failed currencies. However, as I previously mentioned, I wouldn't trust the government at that point to create a new currency. I don't think you would as well, and nobody would. So basically, we don't want another fiat currency with the same issues that will lead to the same end scenario, and we don't want anything that is bought by the governments and the central banks that caused this huge mess. As such, I only see two options that we can use as money, that fulfill the properties of money and that are immune to this distrust we have from the government, and that are not controlled by a central entity. And that is the precious metals on one side, with gold and silver, and cryptocurrencies on the other side, especially cryptocurrencies that are decentralized and reliable. Both of them, have the necessary properties to be used as money. Both are good stores of value due to the limited and even finite supply that they have, and due to their durability as well, which is super important to be a good store of money for the future. They are a good unit of account for our exchanges, because they are divisible, they are interchangeable in the sense that a gold coin is equal to any other gold coin with the same content of gold, and each Satoshi, for example, is equal to any other Satoshi. And basically, they are also good mediums of exchange because they are portable, they are very easy to carry and trade, and they have all the conditions to be easily accepted as money. Most importantly, as I mentioned, one of the important characteristics for these turbulent periods is that both the supply of precious metals and the supply of cryptocurrencies are not controlled by any single entity and are independent from humans, from governments, from central bank manipulation, which is super important. Gold and silver have, of course, the advantage of being here for longer, of being used as money many times across history and across time. But cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin also offer their own advantages and their own unique characteristics when compared to gold and silver. For example, cryptocurrencies are much more easily divisible than gold, as you can literally divide them in like a click in a transaction at a much smaller rate than gold, because you don't need to melt anything. It's just literally, clicking that button to confirm the transaction. Besides that, if you look at Bitcoin, the supply is programmed, and you basically know how much supply comes into circulation at each given point in time, and the supply is finite. In the case of Bitcoin, we are reaching 21 million Bitcoin on the market, and from that moment onwards, no more Bitcoin will be produced, which even gives it a bigger stability than gold, because gold, you can always find a new mine, you can always produce more gold. Bitcoin can also be superior in one sense, in terms of durability, in the sense that, contrary to gold, it's not exposed to wear and tear of the environment. So in the Bitcoin network, one Satoshi will always be equal to one Satoshi. In real life, you can have people scraping little bits of gold to make a profit from a coin in the hope that you won't notice it. Another advantage of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is the portability. If you're making big trades and if you're carrying a lot of money, and the truth is, with Bitcoin is very easy. You just send it through the internet. It's easy to carry. Gold, you'd have to carry bags of gold, a lot of gold. And especially for international trade, sending gold from country to country is something that will take several days and a lot of money. While sending Bitcoin will be very quickly. You will have that money in your possession in a matter of minutes, which is a big advantage, I would say. However, one disadvantage of Bitcoin compared to gold and silver is that Bitcoin actually requires the internet, it requires a computer for transactions, while gold and silver are physical, and it just requires you to have them in your possession. So definitely, this is not financial advice, but if you can have both, why not? I think it's a way to get you covered in any eventuality, I would say. So if you believe in this narrative, if you think it makes sense, I would say that any cryptocurrency that has the function of money, that can play that role, and that has targeted the financial world on this kind of substituting money narrative, is likely to be in a good position to take advantage of this narrative and to be used as money in some locations between some people. But you might be asking, what are the best cryptocurrencies in the space for this use case? And I can give you my opinion, but it's nothing than my opinion. You should definitely do your own research. Is that if we enter a period of distrust against currencies, I think currencies with a finite supply, a wide distribution, a lot of security and resilience that are proven for a while, and that are of course also decentralized, especially in terms of its distribution and its control, seems to be an obvious choice for adoption by the population. And if you ask me about names specifically, I see Bitcoin extremely well positioned, but I also see Cardano in a good position, and considering the smart contracts that Cardano has that could allow for more complex operations, I think that it could be one currency that would be adopted for this kind of use cases. But of course, this is dependent on whether this actually happens. And this is just a possibility. Seems like a very likely possibility if you look at things in the world, but nothing in life is guaranteed. And while this does seem like something that you cannot avoid, that will be unavoidable, the reality is that life can surprise you. And for example, thinking about it, one scenario I see that could stop us from going into such an extreme scenario and that could change the direction we are moving towards would be if governments and central banks can agree in some kind of currency reset while it's still time, like something that could happen due to a major crisis, for example, or due to the introduction of a CBDC as a promise of a new monetary solution that would solve all these problems and that could avoid the monetary collapse. And while it's true, it would avoid the monetary collapse right now, for a few more years at least, it would create a very dystopian society where your central banks, your government would have even more control over your money and your finances. And in the long run, what this means is they would still do the kind of policies that are benefiting them, but that are deeply hurting you. As such, that would be a terrible scenario, as it wouldn't really solve the underlying problem. It would just delay a solution and create an even bigger problem later. But finally, coming back to cryptocurrencies, and that is what matters, and I hope it helped reinforce a little bit your belief in cryptocurrencies. I think while the financial aspect and this financial narrative will play, in my opinion, a big role in terms of long-term narratives for cryptocurrencies and long-term use cases, the reality is that there are many other interesting use cases that you can have leveraging blockchain technology, leveraging cryptocurrency, where cryptocurrencies actually help increasing transparency, removing intermediaries, decreasing costs, decrease risks, and even align incentives for the desired behavior to happen more often. And as such, it is important that there are many other use cases for you to consider that have their merit. A good example is deepin. These whole niche and these whole narratives of deepin projects I think are really interesting. They really increase security, reliability, resilience, and the decentralization of networks. And you can find some of the best deepin projects in this video here, and I hope to see you there.